Hi everyone, this is Louis Sinibaldi, and I'm here with the SiniCon E24 controller. Let me open up Reaper, and I want to show you what we have done so far with the settings for the controller. It's similar to some of the previous videos that we had, but we've added some features and we've cleaned up the functionality from the previous version. So here we are with a blank project. We just have blank tracks. 18 tracks, in fact, over here. And let's take a look at the controller and the initial zone that we have created for it. A lot of this was done by FunkyBot from the Reaper forum, so we're really thankful for his help. But let's get to it. Okay, so the controller has 3 rows of encoders and 8 columns for a total of 24 encoders. Each encoder, as you can see, has a screen below it that will soon be able to display information of what the encoder is doing, and we also have 8 buttons at the bottom. So let's call the first row the A row, the second row the B row, and then the third row the C row. This is the way it's going to be delineated in the MST file for CSI, and in the zone files we'll also be using the same thing: A1 through A8, B1 to B8, C1 to C8. So the way the zone is set up to start with is the row C, as in Charlie, is affecting volume. Row B, as in Baker, is affecting panning. And row A, as in Apple, is affecting the volume of the sends of the selected track. And some of the things we have done on the zone file is, for example, when you touch the volume faders, it enlarges the display on the mixer window and also on the track view window. It's a little bit harder to see, but if you look over here, you'll notice that it's showing the panning value and the volume value. So if I let go of the button, it'll go back to the original, and then you won't see those values anymore. And then this works with all the first 8 tracks. If you want to bank, you're able to bank by using the bank right button, and now you're controlling the 16th track all the way down to the 9th track. But let's go back to the first track. So another thing we did on the last revision was we created it so we're able to enlarge all these volume buttons visually, and it doesn't matter what sequence you touch the encoders or what sequence you let go of the encoders. This is the new functionality that we did, which is the panning, and now these control panning, and also they enlarge the view for ease of knowing which track you're working on. And again, these work the same way, where they're able to come on and come off from the enlarged view fairly quickly and also very efficiently. Okay, the other thing we have is, for example, our first track has a bunch of sends. So let's select it. First, you need to select it. And then these upper buttons are able to control the different sends all the way up to 7. There's only 7 sends on this track, so this one's controlling the 7th. We could do up to 8, but the 8th button is not bringing anything up because there is no 8th send on this track. The other thing we can do with this is we can mute the actual send that is controlling. This is the third send and is being muted by the third, pushing down on the third encoder of the A row, and so on and so forth. And then the other thing we can do with this is we have a modifier, which is the control button. So for example, if I have this, which is the fifth send, I can control the volume. If I hold the modifier, and actually if I press it down, it mutes it, right, as I mentioned before. But if I hold the control button and I press it down, look at the post fader section, and now it's called pre-fader. Now it says post fader, now it says pre-fader. Post fader, pre-fader. So it lets you toggle that. So for example, these sections, post fader right here, if I hold control, pre-fader, post fader. If I let go of control, it does the mute. The other zone that we have done that, again, FunkyBot created, and I wasn't able to get it working initially, but now I've dealt with that and fixed it, is the top row, instead of having sends, we are using the last encoder to be able to affect the last touched effect parameter. And I'll show you what that is. It's just something that you don't have to map and have a zone file for your plugin, but it lets you change one parameter, the last one that you touched. So for example, we're on track 3 has an effect. So let's get into the mode, and we get into the mode by hitting Control Lock. Lock is our 5th button on the bottom. It's hard to do it from here, but anyway, this is the 5th button, Control Lock. So nothing has changed. Once we get the screens going, it will show you that you're in a different zone visually. But let's select track number 3, and we're still selecting with these. Now, something I've done is I've removed the enlarging of the visual mixer window when you touch the screens, when you touch the encoders, but you're still able to select the tracks by touch. And same thing with the panning. Again, they're not enlarging down here, and this is also not changing display views, or layout views, but they are you're still able to change the panning on one right here, or change the volume. And again, let's go back to 3, and it brings up our effects. So this is what I was talking about, being able to affect the last touched effects parameter, but nothing has been touched yet. So for example, if I were to go here and touch the frequency, then when I move this, it changes the frequency. If I go click on the gain, now this changes the gain. If I click on the bandwidth, this changes the bandwidth. And it's hard to see over here. Let's click on 2, bring up the gain, and go back to bandwidth. So you can see it's basically the Q. Now, you have to remember that this encoder is latched onto the bandwidth of track number 3. So if, for example, I were to go to track number 5, we have the same same FX, but even if I went to the second node, if I turn this, well, I touched it last, but like for example, if I go to track 3, and I change the bandwidth. If I go to track 5 and I turn this, it's not going to affect anything here because it's still latched onto the track 3 parameter. So if I change it all the way and go back to track 3, you'll see that it's changed to a very sharp graphic. So if I go back to 5 and I change the parameter the other way and then go back to 3, now you can see that it's been modified. So this will always remain on the last touched effect parameter. So it's good to know that. But so these are the changes we made. I feel like the zone is pretty much finished as far as its functionality. I'm going to start diving into the effects and being able to control different effects and mapping the whole controller for multiple effects. So that's the next thing. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support, guys. Happy holidays and stay safe.